Well, we are now ready to actually hook on to the seed trailer, but before we do that, I've got a spare tire that I want to mount down on the top of this fuel tank. Now, in the last video, I was screwing around with this trailer, and we ended up putting that gallon reader on there. The Newton Ag crew, they got done drag lining. We went and filled all their equipment up. We started with a full tank of fuel. We pumped 454 gallons out. We're going to use that gallon reader for a gauge as to tell how much we have left in this tank. So we'll just reset that to 0 after we fill it. When we get to that magic number, we'll know how much is in it. So right now it's a little over half full. Now you're probably wondering, why is that gauge this way? Well, you can only run the fuel through it in one direction. So it has to come in on this side, it has to exit on this side. So if we wanted it to read this way, we would have had to have put it upside down. So we were not able to do that, so we just put it on there the way it is. At some point in time, I would like to get some kind of a gauge for this tank, whether it be a sight gauge or something similar to what they use in a heating oil tank. If you recall, in a previous video, we took a wheel off of this. We took a wheel off the seed tender. They are both 6.5 inch 8-bolt centers. However, this one takes 1/2 inch studs. The seed tender takes 5/8 stud. So we got the actual wheel for this trailer, same identical wheel. However, we just put a truck tire on it. This is an old, we've had this around. This is probably a spare tire from my 94 F350, I bet. It is I believe it's the same size, 235/85 R16 Cooper Discover Radio LT. Yes, it's a truck tire. It's not a trailer tire. These are 235/80 R16s. So it's not exactly the same size. 235/85. 235/80. Yes, it's not exactly the same size, but being that we have a spare, we will never have a flat tire. If we did not have a spare, we would run into a flat tire. So what I have is I have a couple of 1/2 inch long bolts that I bent into a J. I'm actually letting them cool down now, and I'm going to J hook it on this bar, bring it up through, put a nut on there, tighten it down so that the tire can't more or less, so the tire can't fall off, and so that it can't grow legs. It won't be able to grow legs as easy if it's bolted down. Again, we will probably never need a spare tire for this trailer, but if it's up on there, we'll have it. So we're gonna get that bolted down. I need to paint up them bolts I made, and then we're gonna get unhooked from this, and we're going to hook on to the seed tender. Get that full of seed, and then we are going to fill both corn planters. In the next couple days, we should be able to get started planting corn here, but we've got to let things dry out here for a little bit. So that is where we are at. Well, we've got this all situated here now. We've got our spare tire mounted up on top of that rack there. Now what I did is I took 2 long 1/2 inch bolts and I bent them in the form of a J, hooked them down underneath this tube here, and then just put it up through the stud holes and tightened it down. I double nutted them because I didn't want to horse it right down and bend this tubing, but I wanted it tight enough so that the nuts wouldn't loosen up. So we've got them double nutted. That's in place. It won't be so apt to grow legs if it's bolted down. I was just going to put a ratchet strap over the top of it, but somebody will take the ratchet strap off and the tire will be gone. So let's go up and get hooked on to the seed tender, and we're going to come down after we get the seed tender filled, and we're going to fill we'll fill this the 16 row, and we'll fill the 12 row corn planter as well. So we might as well go ahead and get hooked onto it. Well, we are all hooked onto the seed tender, and we've got our spare tire and wheel here. This tire, we've actually got 4 of them, is very similar to the tires that are on there. We bought a tag-along trailer some years ago, and the inside tires were a different size than the outside. The outside tires were bigger, therefore the inside tires dragged, and of course they wore out, and the correct tire was the tire that was on the inside. And we ended up putting 8 brand new tires on it, and we had these 4 tires here left over. So I originally thought that the spare tire would fit in this cavity up front here, just kind of set down in there. However, it doesn't want to sit in there too awful well, and it's just going to hinder being able to get the engine started. I'm having to look on this thing, and that recoil we should maybe turn on there so that we are starting it from this side. We could turn it maybe 90 degrees or something, or 180 rather, but we'll tackle that here in a minute. So what I've decided to do was put this spare tire in on the back of it. Originally I was looking at this plate right here, and I said, well, we could just bolt the spare tire right to that back plate, but then we've got to hold it up in the air to put bolts in. I said, you know what, it'll fit very nicely right under there. However, we need to put some pieces of iron in there to hold it. So I've got 2 pieces of angle iron vice gripped into place. We had to cope the end out so that it would miss their piece of tubing that they're running from one side to the other. They're running a wire, they're wires from one side to the other. So we coped that piece of angle iron out for that. We're going to weld these in there. However, I probably should have another piece across the center. Therefore, we could just take and do the same thing, run bolts down through the rim right into the support that goes across. Now, I can do it one of 2 ways. I can do it vertically or lengthwise, or I could do it crossways. However, anything that we put in there can't be put in permanently, because I gotta imagine that if we want to pull this auger out that runs underneath the unit here, it has to come out and back through this hole here. So anything that we put in here is going to have to be bolted. I thought I could bolt down through here, but I can't bolt down through here. So either that or we just weld it in. You know what, we just weld it in, and we'll worry about that problem when it arises. So let's go ahead and weld these 2 real good, and then this center one here, I'm just going to weld the top. Then we can just take a zip wheel on a grinder if we have to take this one out, zip the top, front and rear. The wheel is actually going to pull the angle iron up, so it's actually going to be pulling it up against the lip anyway. So let's get this welded. We're going to have to splash some paint on it, and then we can mount the tire down and get some seed into this thing. Well, we've got our angle iron pieces welded into place. Now this one is directly in the way if we want to get that auger out, so I only put a little tack weld in the front, in the rear, and in the front. We're going to drill a hole down through this guy here, and that's how we'll mount our tire down so that it doesn't grow legs or fall off. If we have to get that auger out, we just take a zip wheel, zip this weld off, zip that one off, take that piece of angle iron out, fix our problem with the auger, but I don't suspect that we're gonna see any problems there. I could have bolted, well, I couldn't have bolted this in. That was the original thought, was I was gonna bolt it in up front and bolt it in the rear. But they have their tube running from one side to the other that they're running their wire in for the taillights. So we'll set our tire down on there. I'm not sure if I'm gonna drill a hole in the center or if I'm going to drill a hole 6.5 inches or 3.25 inches off from center and then just run a bolt down through 2 lug nut holes. So if I drill one in the center, I could just put a long piece of flat bar across it, but then it's going to put rust marks on the rim. So I think 3.25 inches off from center, 6.5 inch center to center from the holes will be fine. Well, we've got this all situated and ready for the spare tire. We ended up putting some paint on these angle irons, and while we were waiting for the paint to dry, I ended up doing a couple of things, and one of them was we turned this recoil about 60 degrees. And we've got that turned so that we're not having to pull the recoil that way. I couldn't turn it to this next notch because I didn't want the recoil to hit that key. So this should be pretty good to get that started. So we'll go ahead and set our spare tire down in place. Got a couple of holes drilled in there. We'll bolt that down so that this thing can't grow legs and walk away on us. And then we'll run this up to the hay barn and load some seed into it. Well, we've got that neatly bolted into place. I had to use all thread because I didn't have 5/8 bolts that were long enough, and then I just welded the nut to the top side. So that is grade 8 all thread, and we use that stuff here and there for jobs like this. So let's go ahead and get some seed into this. Yeah, that should work pretty good. I have the valve stem down on the bottom side. I was going to leave the valve stem up on the top side just so that we could, you know, periodically check the tire to make sure it's not losing any wind, but I worried about somebody setting something in here and breaking the valve stem off. We could actually throw a gas can in here or something, but that's probably going to grow legs as well. But at least it's a small area to put something, seed treatment or what have you. So let's go ahead and get this guy filled up with some seed. Well, we've got this opened up, got our tarp rolled over to the other side, and of course this bracket needs modified some way, somehow here. When you bring the tarp arm back to its home position here, the handle hits the ground. So I've got a couple of options here. I can shorten up this handle. It doesn't need to be that long. Have to drill another hole in it here, but that's still going to hang down kind of low. So I've got to do something there, or get another one of these tarp holders. I don't know if I have one in the shop or not, but we need to have one on this side as well. It needs to be in this position for when it's opened up, or closed rather. So let's get some seed in there. We'll have to take it back down to the shop and modify that. Well, now we are ready to grab some seed and throw it in that seed tender. We have 26 boxes. We have, how many different varieties? We have 15 different varieties. 7 of those varieties are for BMR silage, which stands for brown midrib, and the other 8 varieties are going to be divided up between conventional silage and grain corn. So what we're going to start with is the longest day BMR variety, which we're going to have 2 varieties of Pioneer and 2 varieties of Brevant that we're going to go ahead and dump into that seed cart. So I have all of these seed tenders, or these totes rather. We've got them all setting in there so that we can open them from the back side, and then we have them all identified with masking tape on the forklift side so that we know what's what without having to look at the card that's either on the hidden side or the opposite side. Right, Nathan? Yep. All righty. Well, we'll get things underway here. Well, we have our seed all loaded. We have 80 units in each box here. I thought this was a 100 bushel unit or 100 unit capacity in each bin here. We're showing 8,056 pounds on the scale. We'll run across the truck scale to see how accurate that is. You can see we've got quite a bit of room still left in each bin. This actually might be a 120 because it looks like we could probably get another 40 bushel into each one, but these are actually really not bushels anyways, they're units, meaning 80,000 seed package units. So we're going to run across the truck scale, then we're going to go down below to where we have the 16 row planter unfolded, and we'll go ahead and fill that. All right, so we'll just run back across the scale. We should be able to just add 8,000 pounds to our already 12,890 pound empty weight, and we should come up with 20,000 pounds, 890. So we are coming in at 20,980. So we're 100 pounds off there somewhere, but that's pretty good. So we are grossing about the same amount of weight with 4 bins of seed corn on as we would if we had the fuel trailer full of fuel and full of diesel exhaust fluid. So I'm going to write that down, that we are 20,980 pound gross, and then that'll just give me an idea of how much weight we're carrying around on us here. So we're just going to get down below. I've got the 16 row planter unfolded. We'll have to get all of our individual boxes open, lower the planter, and then start filling it. Well, that's a mucho no good. I can't get seed to get to that vertical auger. Something is lodged in there. Probably wondering, why do you got the tractor running? Well, we are purging the air out of the hydraulic downforce system. That runs off of the constant flow, the power beyond on the tractor. And when you unhook and hook back up to the planter, what they want you to do is to purge the air out of the line. And we're just running hydraulic oil through the whole system. We've got this loopholes hooked up. We've got the air out of there now. So what I need to do is shut the tractor off, unhook that hose. We need to move this seat tender out of the way. We need to sweep off a real nice spot on the concrete here. We'll have to go ahead and open our trap door on the bottom of this auger. It's a clean out. And we'll have to get that opened up. I don't know what's going on here, but we'll have to see what we have causing that to plug up. There isn't any seed in this tube yet. So yeah, fun stuff. Well, I ran up to the shop and grabbed a broom. Got a nice spot all swept off here on the concrete. I moved the planter out of the way so that Sarge could get hooked onto this trailer here. I thought, sure, I would have been loaded up and out of here before he came down. What I wanted to do is I just wanted to put a little bit of seed in every hopper. We were going to load this 5-gallon pail and then put a couple of handfuls in each hopper, run it down to the field down the road, dry fire it, then run some seed through, make sure everything was going to work before we ended up putting 3 bushel of seed in each and every hopper. I don't mind lifting one of them off if there's a problem with one row, but if we've got a problem with every single row and we have to lift that off, lift every one of them off, that's not going to be too fun. So I went ahead and put the auger back down in the transport position. Wanted to see if that auger turned at all. And it is like no good. So we're going to open up that trap door on the bottom, let that clean out. Oh, by the way, we did switch brand of beers, so we are now drinking Miller. Labatt Blue kind of left us high and dry here. So I hope I don't have to get into that unit there and pull the auger out. What we might have wrong is the auger might be in backwards. I'm not sure. I don't think that would be the case, but you never know. You never know. That, well, that can't be in backwards unless they've got a stub shaft going into the end of it. And yes, I guess it could be in backwards. So let's go ahead and pull this open here. It can't be in backwards because there's corn that has made it up front here. And I don't know. I did run this the other day up at the shop. We goofed around with it. And I don't know if there's something wrong with this unit here coming up the vertical auger. So let's see if it'll start now. Upper one is turning or not. Or the vertical one. pin, that vertical auger is not turning, so I don't know if we have a pin sheared off or what, but there it goes now. So we went ahead and cleaned that out, and I don't know what is driving that other auger there. So let's go ahead and dig into it here. Well, we went ahead and removed a chain off of that gearbox, and it appears that there's either a shear pin on this vertical auger or the plastic of the auger is sheared all together. So I've got to stick my hand up in there and see what I can feel. So yeah, well, just like everything else when we get it brand new, some assembly required. The shear pin that is on the bottom of that auger is non-existent. It doesn't even look like they ever had one in there. So I originally came down here with a 3-inch long shear bolt. That will not work. Sarge went up to get a 2.5-inch long bolt. I don't know if that's going to be long enough to get in there. If it's not long enough to get in there, we're going to have to pull this top off and go down in through the top of it, because we just can't get the swing out of the bolt. So yeah, I went ahead and measured this top bolt, and that measured 3 inches, but we could probably get away with a 2.5. I've got a Stover style lock nut, and it looks like that's about a 1/2 inch longer than it needs to be. So hopefully a 2.5-inch bolt fits in there, and we can get this bolted together and get using it here. Well, we shortened up the length of the bolt so that we could get it to fit in there, and yeah, that doesn't work. So we've got to take this cover off and hopefully be able to reach down in there, get past this horizontal auger, to be able to put the bolt in from the top side. So we've got some of these bolts out of this cover. I've got to remove a master link from that drive chain coming over to the top of the gearbox, and get the chain off, pop that guy off of there, and we'll get down in there and put the 3-inch shear bolt in there. It appears that there was not a bolt in there at all. There was still plastic in the hole, because this is a plastic auger. So we'll get this cover off and get down in there. Well, we've got this top cover removed, and this is where the shear pin goes in. So we have to put it in from the top. We're just going to shove this 3-inch guy in there, and you can clearly see that there is not, or has not been, a bolt in there at all. I mean, there is some seed treatment on this part of the auger, because it would have filled this cavity up, and then it couldn't go anywhere because this auger here was not running at all. So we'll get this guy in there. I gotta lift up this auger a little bit to get this guy in there. Where the heck the hole is here? Hole is right there. We'll shove this guy in there like that, and that comes around, and now we can get a nut and washer on there. This is a lock nut that is going to work very nicely. Yeah. So, like I was saying, some assembly required, right? All right. They mashed I had to take the chain off that one sprocket, and they had a cotter pin that was too small. They ripped it in half and then shoved it in there. So this is the cotter pin that they used. Actually, they used too small of one. They folded it up twice and shoved it in. So, good stuff. Alright, so we've got this all back together. And the one takeaway that we have from this little experience is we know how to get into replacing that shear pin on the bottom of that auger. You have to take that shroud off, remove that one chain tensioner sprocket. That chain will come right off the drive for the vertical auger. Pop the half-length pin out of the chain coming over to that gearbox. Remove the 5/16 bolts on that cover, that top cover. That will allow you to remove the cover and get down into that little cavity there so that you can get the shear pin replaced. I'm fairly confident that we will not be shearing that pin off. The only real way you could shear that pin off is if you plug up the end of the auger and continue to run it, but I don't think this engine's got enough power to shear that off. So the one thing that we do know, we got about 100 pounds of corn on the ground. So I'm going to pull ahead, shovel that back into the seed tender, run this, and hopefully we don't have any issues with it. So I've got a tarp in my truck that I'll have to utilize in case we have to tear this apart in the field. We could just lay a tarp underneath it and we can use that to dump the corn out on. So we've got a master link here that looks like when they went to assemble this, they kind of left that into place there. We'll just use this as a spare. It doesn't have the clip for it, so that's probably why they did not use it. So let's continue with what we are supposed to be doing here today. Well, we are back into place. We've got our pile of seed corn cleaned up, and now we'll try this again. We'll fold our auger out, put a little bit in the pail, go down through, we'll fill the pail, and then we'll put a little bit in each hopper all the way down through, and then we will fire it, see how it does, make sure everything works, and then we can go through and fill all of the hoppers up. Full, that is. Well, we got seed out that time, and we're gonna do that like maybe 3 more times. I've got just a couple of big handfuls in there. We'll go down through the rest of the planter, do the same thing. Then I can back this up, drop some seed on the concrete here. We can run each row individually, make sure everything's gonna work, make sure the downforce is doing what it has to do, and then we can go ahead and fill the hoppers more or less full. So I'll join up with you once we get done with doing what we need to do to this. I might actually take it down to the field down the road and just make some passes across the field without it planting to make sure the hydraulic downforce is running correctly and to prime the fertilizer system. So I have to reacquaint myself to how this actually runs. So we'll join up with you in a little while here. Well, I didn't take this down in the field, but we better make this pretty quick because it looks like we've got a rain shower moving in. I backed up in the bunk, fired all 16 rows, and we've got corn coming out of all of the rows. So now we'll go ahead and fill these hoppers. What I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to just put 100 pounds in each hopper. I'm going to see how that works with just measuring it out accordingly here. So let's go ahead and start with 100 pounds in each hopper. right, so far so good. I've got 8 hoppers filled. We've got them all, well, we've got it set at 100 pounds, and they all seem to be evenly filled. At first I didn't know exactly how to run this. The first couple hoppers I held the button on, but after I figured out what was going on, all you have to do is just press the button and then it starts metering out 100 pounds. I don't know what happens if you hit the button again. I don't know if it'll cancel it or not, so we'll try that on this next one. So which bike is faster? Yeehaw! Well, that'll give you an idea how this thing works. It works very nice. Now the one that we were using last year, I didn't use the scale function on it, and I was just guessing as we went along, and this does a real nice job. I've got to put talc on this seed yet. I'm not going to use the that metering device there. We're using some expensive talc that I'm not sure that we'll be able to get this thing to accurately put it on. If it was just regular talc, I wouldn't worry about it so much, but I need to apply the talc to this seed, and I need to get that other planter filled, but I think I'm gonna wait to see if this storm is gonna blow through here or not. So with that being said, that is gonna do it for this video. We're gonna try planting corn tomorrow, weather permitting. They are calling for a shower here tonight. It is Sunday, May 6th, 7th, something like that. And if we get started tomorrow, we will be a day earlier than we started last year. So I want to thank everybody for watching, and we will catch you at the next video.